Properly maintain your DJI Matrice 300. And like the publication says, this is a top-of-the-line industrial machine. So spending just a few minutes checking your aircraft could save you and your company or your department some serious headaches. TLC now will save you later on. And if you have troubles, feel free to give us a call. We'll be happy to get you through it. You are never alone in the drone world, even if you didn't get the equipment from us. With all that said, I'm Mike Den Hartog from Florida Drone Supply, and let's break down this recent publication from DJI Enterprise Group. We're going to go over the following in this video: motors and rotors, motor and aircraft arm connection, propeller and propeller adapters, frame arms, landing gear, battery compartment, heat dissipation vents, rubber port covers, gimbal dampening plate and gimbal connection, and the lenses. We will also show you some screenshots, pictures, and text from the DJI publication between each section discussed in the publication. We'll also add some of our tips we have learned along the way. Let's go ahead and get started. First, we're going to talk about the motors and rotors. As it says here, we're going to rotate the arm, the motor around, and we're going to find out if there's any grinding, anything unnatural. This should be very smooth, very consistent, nothing unusual, okay? Also, as it says, we're going to look at this little gap right here. There's a little tiny gap right there. And as we look at that, we're going to look at it and just make sure that as it rotates, it doesn't change in any way, shape, or form, that it's make sure it's balanced properly. And then just give it a little jiggle and make sure there's no movement other than the rotation. That would indicate that the bearings might be bad if it had that movement in there. But if this is true, nothing's bent and everything is perfect, then we can move on to the next step. All right, next thing we're going to talk about is the motor and motor arm connections. Now we want to make sure that this is nice and firm right here. You want to make sure that the adhesive in here and that these bolts are still nice and tight. So you want to just kind of firmly hold on to the carbon fiber and twist the motors a little bit and make sure that it is firmly connected. Then if you have an Allen wrench, you can take that, put that in here, and you can see if that is tight. You don't want to turn it though, so don't force it. Just make sure that it's not loose. If you end up turning it, then you're going to have to redo the Loctite that's on it. So you'll have to completely back it out, put new Loctite, and put it back on. They do use the blue Loctite, I've noticed. So you're going to want to make sure that you do that and make sure those are all nice and tight. Some departments will put a drop of paint on them. That way they can tell if it is rotating. I know that sometimes they do just vibrate loose, and if they have that drop of paint on there, you can tell that it's rotated. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Next, we're going to talk about propeller and propeller adapters. This one is true and dear to my heart. I have had more aircraft have problems in flight due to propellers than anything else, far and none. So these are carbon fiber propellers that stay on all the time, so they're a little more susceptible to some of the aircraft. So you want to just take those and feel the tips, feel the edges, make sure that they are nice and sturdy and no nicks or dings in it. Being that it's a carbon fiber prop, even the smallest of nicks could cause a problem. You'll want to rotate that and just kind of give it a little twisting action and feel that, make sure it's nice and tight everywhere along the way, and that the propellers are uniform all the time. Now also, I'm going to tip the aircraft back a little bit here to show you the bottom here. You're going to see this adapter plate on the bottom. This has two screws that attach it to the top of the motor. You're going to want to make sure those screws are tight. This is where possibly that paint pin on there might really help to make sure those screws are not backing out ever. Also, look right here and make sure there's no cracks where the propeller adapter meets the propeller. Just want to rotate that around and inspect that from both sides to make sure that there is no cracks on this bracket anyway. If you want to clean the blades, you just use a clean dry cloth to wipe them off. And DJI does recommend replacing them after 300 hours of use or 1 year, whichever comes first. Next, we're going to talk about the arms and where they connect to the aircraft itself. So right here, this little clamp right here that we have on here, these can become cracked or damaged, and we want to make sure that this is in good shape, because if you over tighten it, it can crack over time or become loose. I'm going to go ahead and to unscrew this and make sure there's no cracks or anything here, and make sure this is nice and there's no fatigue cracks on there. I'll put that back on here to where it is up to the red line is covered. Then I'm going to take a hold of the arm and make sure that it doesn't move very much. And you can see it moving just a little bit, but it should be firm and it shouldn't be too wobbly in any way, shape, or form. And then you want to take your Allen key again and just put a little tension on each one of these screws to make sure that each one. And this one's too small for this. You can see me spinning it, but you just want to check each one of those. And there are a total of 28 bolts throughout the aircraft. You want to make sure that all those aircraft bolts are nice and tight. You can see the ones here on top. This is the right size for those. And I'm just putting just a teensy minute of tension on there, just to see that they're nice and tight and that they're not loose in any way. All right, and again, like I said before, if you do end up turning any of these, you want to go ahead and take it all the way out, put Loctite on it, and put it back in. That way, the Loctite is fresh. All right, we're also going to go ahead and check the landing gear next, and it'll be the same thing here. Check these bolts here as well. Next, we're going to talk about the landing gear. Now, you can grab one of these little saddles to cover up the strobe on top, or you can just use a towel, whatever's best, but you don't want to put pressure on that bulb on top. I'm going to go ahead and turn the aircraft over. It's a little clumsy to do so. But as we're checking those bolts, we will have checked all the bolts here in the body already. We want to make sure that these right here are nice and tight. And then we wanted to go ahead and disconnect the landing gear from it and make sure that all the connections are really good here too. That this little plug here is in nice and firm, that there's no cracks or anything on here that's gonna, obviously be a problem. And when you store these, if you're using the original case in particular, you want to make sure that you store this with this all the way down and maybe even turn a couple turns. That way it's all the way at the end. This will prevent it from sliding up. If it slides up in this area, in the original factory case, it can rub against the props and cause prop damage. So you want to make sure that that is on this end all the way at the very end. All right, let's move on to the next thing. All right, next we're going to talk about the battery compartment and make sure that it is all set. So I'm going to pick up the aircraft and just flip that over gently. I always hate turning this one over. All right, now the first thing it talks about is making sure that the batteries don't shake at all when they're inside there. So just go ahead and give them a good feel. Just kind of wiggle them around a little bit, make sure that they are in there sturdy. Then it talks about making sure the eject mechanism is working. So go ahead and unlock that. Check and make sure that it is secure and there's no cracks in it and that it is very secure. And then make sure that you can eject those batteries out. No problem whatsoever, okay? So then after you got those batteries ejected from the aircraft, that these connections are corrosion free and that there's no dust or dirt in there. This is where a little blow tool or a can of spray air might be great to make sure there's no dust or dirt in there. And just a little contact cleaner would be good for that. Next, we're going to talk about the heat dissipation vents. So we'll go ahead and remove this little cap here. And then using the little blower that came with the battery station, we're going to go ahead and just blow out all the dirt that might be in here and the fans. Make sure those are all nice and clean. And make sure everything is nice all the way through. There's no dust or debris in there. Now, you can also take an alcohol wipe. You can wipe this all off, top and bottom. And then you'll want to turn the aircraft on and then listen to the fans to make sure that they sound good and that there's no vibrations or any kind of loud noises that are unusual coming from those. Next, we're going to talk about the dust port covers. You want to make sure that all the dust port covers are in place and that there's no dirt underneath them. So you can go ahead and open these up. Again, take that little blower and just blow out those USB-C ports in there. Make sure that all that's nice and clean. Same on this side here. Make sure again that these are all intact and that they're all in place, and as well as the ones on the bottom as well for the gimbals. And we'll talk about that when we talk about gimbal care, but you want to make sure those dust covers are in place and that they are clean from any debris, and they make a nice seal. All right, next we're going to put the cradle back on top here, which you can also, like I say, use a towel and very carefully rotate the aircraft over its axis here, sitting it down on top of its top here. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and remove here and take this one off. As you can see here, as an example, we put this spotlight on here. I'll take that over there, set that nicely on the side. I'll take off our H20T as well. Now I have our plates here exposed, and you can see here the contacts inside, making sure, I'm not gonna touch it with this, but making sure that these are all clean inside here. Make sure there's no dirt or debris in there. Again, you can use your blow tool and make sure that's all nice and clean and clear. Then you're also going to make sure that underneath here that your gimbal seals are nice and tight and that there's no problems there. You want to make sure that these screws are nice and tight. And we have the dual gimbal on, but you may only have the single. That's pretty common. And just make sure that all those mounting screws are nice and tight. You're also going to want to make sure that your dampeners are nice. Just give them a little squeeze here. Examine them for any leaking fluid, making sure that nothing has started leaking out of those. That's a real easy thing to change, but boy, it can be messy if they break. Again, your blow tool here, just making sure that you can blow off the stuff. We got a little bit of sand on ours. You can go through here and check all that and make sure that's all nice and tight and clean and dust free. Next, we're going to talk about all the lenses on the aircraft. Now we've got the infrared, the auxiliary vision sensors here, as well as our auxiliary lights and the beacon. So I'm gonna go ahead and just take a little microfiber towel. I'm just gonna wipe those off, make sure they're nice and clean. And as I do, I'm gonna put a little pressure on them, make sure that they're firm and that they don't move or shake in any way. Especially these vision sensors, if they move at all, that could definitely cause you a problem. And then the same with the lights here, the auxiliary lights. And then just polish off the beacon, make sure it's not cracked, make sure the housing is secure. Then I'm going to rotate the aircraft around and do that for all of these sensors. I'm wiping the ones here in the back now, you can't see there. But then I'm going to take this and I'm going to flip it over again. Make sure these don't hit me in the face. And then I'm going to check these ones in the back because they're right here in front of me. And then you're going to want to make sure you check all the ones around here, like this on the front, make sure they're nice and clean. Take this off and then check the ones on the sides. And they're on all sides of the aircraft. So as you're checking those, make sure you look at them, make sure you feel them, make sure you feel there's any movement at all. And then most importantly, I would say, is making sure that you have a nice clean spot here and that you clean that FPV camera on the front there. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share with you this publication from DJI Enterprise Group. And as always, we are here for you each and every day. We hope that you found these 10 maintenance tips helpful, and by following these steps, you can keep your M300 RTK flying at peak performance. As DJI says, the M300 is a rugged industrial tool that is bound to earn its healthy share of wear and tear. DJI does recommend regular professional maintenance every 3 to 6 months, where experts calibrate and inspect every detail of your drone and replace any vulnerable parts to restore the drone to its optimal condition. We recommend doing this maintenance at the 6-month mark and again at the 11th month mark at the very least, so you can best utilize your DJI Shield coverage and renew that for another year with DJI. From Florida Drone Supply, I'm Mike Den Hartog. God bless and